For exclusive podcasts and more, sign up at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Nicole Classer from Manchester, Missouri. Nicole will get a marathon decal showing she watched 26.2 hours of her favorite crime show. To be next week's winner, sign up at lawandorderpodcast.com.
I'm Kevin Flynn with Rebecca Lavoie and Michal Schick, and these are their stories.
You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Law and order, law and order, law and order. It's no ordinary police procedural, baby. It's the FNOG of police procedurals, baby. Law and order, law and order, law and order, law and order. These are their stories, these are their stories.
Welcome to These Are Their Stories, the podcast about network TV's most enduring crime franchise and the real-life cases that inspired their shows. I'm Kevin Flynn. Each podcast will break down an episode from either Criminal Intent, SVU, or Original Recipe. And today we're looking at Law & Order Season 11, Episode 5, Return.
Rabbis, it's our position that Mr. Becker seeking refuge in Israel is a cynical attempt to avoid the consequences of the murder of his father's partner.
Except even a murderer is entitled to return to Israel if he's Jewish.
With all due deference, Rabbi, forgive me, but was it ever the intention of the law of return to allow a criminal to avoid having to answer for his crime?
Joining me to do just that is true crime author and the host of Crime Writers On and Netflix's You Can't Make This Up podcasts, Rebecca Lavoie. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you for having me back on the show.
Again, we're all in isolation, so I really can't bring anyone else in.
I'm always on the show.
But we are able to bring in a very special guest from the Nice Jewish Fangirls podcast. It's Michal Schick. Hi, Michal.
Hi. How's it going?
Good. I know I mangled the name again.
That is
I've been doing
totally
it 15
fine.
times.
Again, you are in exalted company.
Well, look, you may be nice and you may be Jewish, but your podcast is really about being fangirls.
Yes.
Do you think there's a difference? You bring a different perspective to Avengers and Harry Potter because of your shared experiences?
You know, I think we do sometimes. I think there are definitely moments of recognition of smaller themes or, you know, kind of the background implications of certain stories that we bring in. And then, you know, every so often they clumsily try and do something Jewish, and then we're all over that. So.
So Michal, you're the perfect person to have on to talk about this particular episode of Law and Order. By the way, we can also have you back to talk about one where they don't bungle the whole Jewish thing. That would
also be the fun in that.
But we would feel weird not asking you to weigh in on this particularly strange episode for sure.
So you guys have been to like Comic-Con and done panels, right? Yeah,
we have panels at New York Comic-Con and Jewish Comic-Con, which was a short-lived endeavor, but very dear to my heart.
Was there cosplay?
Yes, actually, there's some people who showed up in cosplay, which I thought was really, really dedicated for like a maybe 100-person convention in a synagogue in Brooklyn.
Michal, of all the franchises, which two cops are your favorite detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team?
I liked some of the ones in this episode.
Just like, because she hasn't watched a lot of episodes.
Briscoe and Green.
Should we disclose I've never seen Law & Order before I sat down to watch this?
You could say Munch. That's Richard Belzer's character.
Oh, so I love Munch. Oh, my God.
Munch, yes. That's perfect. And do you have a favorite prosecutorial team?
Favorite Law and Order District Attorney prosecutorial team?
No, she doesn't.
No, I can't pick. They're all so great. I couldn't possibly.
Haven't you learned anything from watching the show, Kevin? You never ask a question that there's no answer to.
It's a standard bit. I got to go through with it. All right, now let's look at the first half of this episode, Law & Order, Season 11, Episode 5, Return. Well, we start by seeing three college students suffer the fear of every New York tourist, falling through the sidewalk in one of those basement hatchways that just appear out of nowhere. Inside, they find the body of Saul Kaplan, co-owner of the leather jacket store Becker and Kaplan. Briscoe and Green ask if it was a break-in, what happened to all the stolen merchandise? So they play Law & Order hopscotch, going from those students to the hooker they saw to the as it was said in the culturally insensitive way of the time, a drag queen hooker with a new leather coat to the John who works for Kaplan, who admits to stealing the coat but not killing his boss, and we are 5 minutes into this episode.
Street crime unit come up with anything?
Nothing.
What about CSU?
No usable prints. Enemy's report confirms 2 shots. One from about 8 feet, hit him in the shoulder. The other from 2 to 3 feet, hit him in the back of the head. Purple's probably standing like right above him.
An execution.
Forensic says the padlock was made to look like it was chiseled, so it has to be an inside job. Who has a rap sheet? None other than Sal, who works for Saul and Sales. So Sal salesman. The detectives hunt down Sal's friend, Eddie, who admits to killing Saul Kaplan for $5,000. But who would want to take out Mr. Kaplan? Briscoe stays up way past his bedtime to hit an after-hours club where Sal hung out with Eli Becker, whose father is the other half of Becker and Kaplan. They find out Eli had been faking the inventory records and selling the coats on the side to fund his coke habit. When they go to arrest Eli, his father says he's gone somewhere you can't get him.
Dun, dun, dun.
Cut to commercial. All right, so off the top, A+ one-liners. The victim was armed with a baseball bat, so Briscoe says...
He was in the office, he heard something, he grabbed a bat.
Yeah, looks like the pitcher blew one by him.
Looks like the pitcher blew one by him.
Yes, very sensitive. I was always
Yes, really.
As always. And then they're talking to those witnesses, the college kids. They may feel like they're going to get in trouble because they went to see a hooker. And there was the one guy...
Is it possible our parents not be made aware of this? My father just had a bypass.
Oh, sure, I'd hate to see you get in trouble, seeing as how you didn't even get your hat knocked off.
Hey, we won't let you get in trouble just because you didn't get your hat knocked off.
It was so weird how those college kids were so worried about them calling their parents. Well, first they said they wanted to call their parents or something, and then it was like, but don't tell my parents I was with a hooker.
Yeah, man, they're just so indecisive.
How about just not call your parents? You're adults. You're in college in New York. Presumably, like, your parents don't have to be involved in every, like, little incident that happens in your life.
Well, Michal, it seems that in New York that parents have influence over everything.
Oh, yes. Everyone listens to their parents. Parents buy you plane tickets when you commit murder. A lot of things happen. I was actually just most impressed that they stuck around. Like, they find the body at night, and then it's like 10 in the morning, and he's like, oh, you want to talk to the kids who have been sticking around here for 6 hours? Oh, yeah, sure, we'll get to it, sure. I think their hearts are in the right place. They're very civic-minded.
They're civic-minded enough to all go together to the sex worker's apartment.
Yeah.
I know. Let's all do this together, guys.
Yeah, no, there was one girl and they were all going to hang around. And
yeah, just like wait in the waiting room or something? I
don't know. My friends aren't that good enough friends that I would wait around for that. I'd just be like, yeah.
How'd it go?
Yeah. I'd be like, Steve, I'll be down here.
It's not like bringing someone to the dentist and hanging out in the waiting room.
No. And that's a lot of pressure to come out of the waiting room a little too quick, if you know what I'm saying.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And we should mention, I know that you already said that this is not a sensitive episode in 2020. They do use the word hooker in the episode. And I'll have you say, I just said sex worker because I know that that's the right thing to say.
Right. Well,
but I don't want our listeners to understand that, like, Briscoe and Green call them hookers.
Oh, that's not all.
Oh, look, they're misgendering people all over the place. It is. This episode truly is the gift that keeps on giving.
Right. Well, I like to say that NBC's year 2000 depiction of a transgender sex worker is very progressive.
Toreador.
Toreador is in a woman's dress, but is pissing on a wall.
Yes.
Toreador, can you give a girl some privacy, please? You know, they've had indoor plumbing for 2,000 years.
Officers, I am so sorry. Is it not permitted to relieve oneself out of doors?
So that tells America, hey, America, she's got a dick.
Right.
That's the way we telegraph
That's
that.
right. But then Green calls her a she.
And I say she because I didn't get to ask her what her pronouns are.
But Green calls her a she.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, they clearly don't know what they're doing because they're like, he, she, he, she. And then they, of course, use the fact that she, who may or may not be transgender, we don't actually know because they don't know anything.
Oh, taking hormones, I don't know.
We don't know.
We're making a lot of assumptions for a fake person.
We don't know
from 20 years ago.
We don't know how Toreador identifies.
Hey, so
neither does Law and Order, and they don't bother to find out.
Episode writer Aaron Zellman chalks this under many of the things that I don't know.
And by the way, why is Torador Scarlett O'Hara?
I don't know.
You mind taking it off so we can take a look at it?
Not at all. Ooh, chilly morning, though not quite unpleasant.
She identifies as Southern as well.
I'm trans-regional. Well, they tracked down Sal's accomplice, Eddie. And he's basically one of my teenage stepsons.
Oh, we can see it's your gym bag, Eddie. We just want to look at it. Why, you don't want to let us?
I don't care.
What you doing with this?
Nothing.
Where'd you get it?
This guy?
Becker and Kaplan. Get in the car.
What's in the bag? I don't know. Something. Stuff.
Poor Eddie. Eddie was like George from Mice and Men.
He really is. Oh,
I could do it with my hands, Sal. I could do it with my hands.
It was so stupid. I felt so bad. I'm like, clearly, Michal, don't you think he was supposed to be like a brain damage from boxing or something?
Oh,
like,
yes.
Oh,
I mean, talk about like, and the imagine being the actor going in and auditioning for that part. So here's what we want.
I've prepared a long soliloquy. No. Just put it aside.
Your brains have leaked out of your ear.
Pretend you've never thought anything. Okay, go.
Okay, go. Pick up this gym bag. All right, now focus. Let's workshop this.
What's
you
that?
don't want him to know what's in the bag. Well, I should say something very... he's probably a Royal Shakespearean actor, right?
No.
He came over to New York. So he wanted a big role.
He's probably an NYU like acting student. Who are you kidding?
No, I would much rather prefer to think of him as some highfalutin actor
Like
who's
he's British, actually?
Yeah, he wanted to. And I would really like to prefer to come up with some obfuscation about what is in the portation of this.
What's his motivation?
His motivation.
They're like, we liked you because your nose looked broken.
All right, let's take a look at the cast for a minute. We have a repeat offender.
Repeat offender.
Rebecca, you're going to remember from our formerly famous Gary Busey episode, the defense attorney Brad Feldman.
Mm-hmm.
He's played by character actor Bruce Altman.
Mm-hmm.
Let him answer for his crime, assuming he committed one in Eretz Yisrael, as is his right.
But let's talk about our Hey, It's That Guy.
Okay.
Hey, it's that guy.
Who is playing the son, Eli Becker? Anybody know the name of that actor?
I know where I know him from. Does that count?
That's Evan Handler.
You've led a very sheltered life, toddler. You know that? Let me ask you something. Have you ever lifted a finger? Have you ever tried unloading a truck? Have you ever tried selling? Have you ever worked a day in your life? The keys to the kingdom, this kid, he gets.
He's best known as, well, David Duchovny's agent, Charlie Wrinkle on Californication.
No, he's not.
And... Can I get to the end? I didn't say I was doing this chronologically. It's also in Sex and the City.
Yes.
Michal, did you recognize him?
No. So I was in 8th grade when this episode aired. So I think I missed a lot of his finer work. But I definitely did scroll through his IMDb and I was like, I think some of this is just like Jewy McJewson. Like,
yes.
He just seems to be cast as like the Jewish guy, which is, okay, that's cool.
Which is, I didn't watch Sex and the City when it was on.
Yeah.
I've watched some reruns that are now on now. It is a terrible show, by the way. Anyone who thinks otherwise, you can come at me with that because I will tell you all the reasons why it's a terrible show. But he is the guy that Charlotte ends up marrying, like, primarily because he's Jewish. Like, that seems to be, at least in the 5 minutes of that episode that I saw.
Evan Handler, he quit the Broadway show I Hate Hamlet, mid-performance after his co-star, Nicole Williams, hit him with a sword and chased him off the stage.
Oh, my God, really?
He had a chip on his shoulder.
Yeah, literally. He was the understudy to Matthew Broderick in Biloxi Blues, but he had to quit when he was diagnosed with leukemia. And he wrote a book called Time on Fire, My Comedy of Terrors, about the experience. And when they were negotiating optioning the film rights, one agent said that they would make the book into a ride at Busch Gardens.
What?
Yeah. He said they could call it Patience of the Caribbean.
Are you kidding?
I'm not joking. I think he didn't go with that agent. He probably thought he was full of shit. Okay, let's talk about Ronnie Ortega, the store employee. Anybody recognize him?
He takes the numbers, puts them in his computer, then he prints out a list to give to the manager. We had all kinds of merchandise that wasn't listed.
That's Anton Pagan. He's a big figure in New York theater and the Actors Studio. You probably have seen him before as Hector, one of the Army recruits in Stripes.
Nope.
And that's the fact, Jack. Okay.
Michal was like, I was 3.
I wasn't even born then. Stripes and Bill Murray? Come on.
You really do see everything through a white guy lens, don't you, Kevin Flynn?
Well, he was Bernardo in West Side Story for some big revival.
All right.
Oh.
The Broadway revival.
What did I say?
No, you said the big revival, and I'm saying the Broadway revival, not the upcoming film revival.
No, God.
Suddenly cast
He's like
into
70 now. I mean, come on. I think he's as old as Bill Murray. He's not going to be Bernardo. He'll be Bernardo's grandfather. Lastly, can anybody identify who was playing Rabbi number 3?
No, but I thought he looked weird.
He thought he looked weird.
I did. And he was like, what? Like the other two, I was like, okay, I get your costume. Like, I just didn't. There were choices made, and I'm not sure I agree with them.
But which, one was number 3? Was it the one on the right, number 3, or the one on the left, number 3?
If you're facing the tribunal,
yes,
he is the one farthest to the left.
So no speaking parts.
He had a line.
He did.
Oh yeah. Here, let me play it.
The Talmud has no technicalities, Mr. Becker. Only laws.
Yeah, they narrowed it down.
Yeah.
Which is definitely what a rabbinical court is for.
I can't wait to talk about that in the second half of this episode.
That's actor Robert Levine. He was a series regular on the TV show Superboy for 2 years.
Superboy.
As Dennis Jackson, the editor of the Daily Planet for young Clark Kent. I swear to God, he did not have that beard at the time.
Can we just talk about the fact that there's a show called Superboy at which Clark Kent worked at the Daily Planet? Was he a boy when he worked there?
Well, he's like a teen. He wasn't like 9 years old.
Okay.
Michal, help me out here, Superboy. We just wandered squarely into your territory.
I'm sorry, guys.
A rabbi who played Perry White's future, come on.
I actually stick more on the Marvel side of things. I'm sorry.
God,
it's all right. Everyone does. That's why they can't get that Superman movie made.
Well, we have released the Zack Snyder cut, so it's fine.
Look, kind of deep cover for a guy who was in a television series not that long before this episode came out.
Kevin, before you looked that up, were you even aware that there was a show called Superboy?
Yes.
You were?
I mean, it wasn't like on my top 500, but... Well, there's a bit of a red herring, or maybe it's a red gefilte fish, I don't know, whether you would call it.
Jesus Christ.
Briscoe and Green talked to Kaplan's widow, and that's when her grandson David enters.
Grandma?
Oh, come here, Tatala.
You all right?
This is my grandson, David.
Hello.
These gentlemen are the detectives that are investigating what happened with your Zayd.
He said that he would take on the family business, but he wants to work on his film career.
I was literally like, oh, I know you. I've been on a date with David Kaplan.
You know, just the way he sort of like enters the hallway, like, oh, Grandma, what's going on here? You, Rebecca, thought maybe there was something to this guy.
He seems super suspicious
Yeah.
in his first appearance. I was like, oh, David did it. 100% David did. A, why is he living with Grandma? Never explained.
Sure, he's working on his film career.
Kind he's going to NYU film school with his little like camcorder that he bought at Radio Shack.
Oh my God, that was so stupid.
And what kind of film is he making? Just like, hey, friends, you stand by that railing. I'm going to take some B-roll of you.
Skipping ahead to nearly the end of the episode, they go to talk to him, and he's got a tripod and a palm quarter attached to that. And I got to get back to my movie.
On a TV set.
No lights.
Where they could
no microphones, no
Keep in
craft
mind,
services.
He's on a TV set. They could have very easily just taken one of their cameras, of which I'm sure they have more than one.
Oh, Mr. Wolf, won't you do that? Right. I think the union there is pretty strong. You can't put a thumb on that. You can say, somebody's got to go down to Circuit City and buy a palm quarter.
I had questions about something else that happened around the widow. Okay,
yeah.
So the partner, that's Becker, right?
Yeah.
he's like, I have to go spend time with Saul's widow. And like, there's a whole thing where like, he's going to be like consoling Saul's widow, spending time with Saul's widow. And you kind of think that when you meet her, she's going to be like a disaster.
Yeah.
She's fine. She's completely fine.
Look how she seems relieved.
Yeah, honestly, I was interested in that too, because, you know, when you say like, oh, you're hosting Shiva for somebody else, like that's a big deal.
Right, because she can't do it.
Exactly.
Such a mess.
And it's like, no, is her apartment too small or something? Like, it does not look
her
that
apartment
way.
was palatial.
Yeah.
These people had a lot of money for owning a leather coat store. I'm just going to say it.
I agree. You know, that's why David only has a palm quarter.
For us Gentiles, explain how Shiva is not like a dinner party.
No.
And honestly, you don't really offer people food like strangers, strange police detectives, and it's
Have
like,
some
oh,
cake.
Do they want something? It's like, no, they don't want something. They want to talk to you about the murder that happened. Yeah, that was. I mean, some of the details I appreciated. Some of the mirrors were covered. I appreciated that. I don't know. Just every time a Jewish woman popped on screen, it was like food. Food.
Even the widow who was like, I can't even offer you cake. Even with the absence of food, there still had to be a line about food.
God help me on this one. When Grandma talks about her son,
yeah,
and she says,
he's a very successful cardiologist with a big practice in Los Angeles. He was here for the funeral, then he had to get back.
He's a very successful cardiologist in Los Angeles.
Oh, she was so proud. She could not have been any prouder. And I think that's why he died happy, because he knew his son was a cardiologist.
Probably.
Evidently. Who didn't stick around for the Shiva?
God damn.
Yeah, where was he? His father just died.
There is something extremely fishy about this family. I'm just going to say it.
I think they were all embezzling from the store. Let's be real.
Medical school costs a lot of money.
You know, maybe the first draft of this, David was originally the culprit, and then they had to like reverse course and just like change it and make the poor bald guy the adopted non-Jewish.
It is a great twist. So the motive and means of the homicide are so convoluted that at one point even Briscoe gives up.
Well, if Eddie's telling the truth, Sal either had reasons of his own to get rid of Kaplan. What they are, we don't know. Or he was doing it for somebody else. Who that is, we don't know.
Yeah, what he said.
Okay, I have to say, never having seen any of this before, I thought Jesse L. Martin was delightful. And I was like, I actually like. It looks like something is happening. There's some kineticism on screen as opposed to everything else.
Isn't he also gorgeous, by the way?
He really is.
Mm-hmm. Gorgeous.
Gorgeous.
Sorry, Kevin. Can't not say it every time. He's is gorgeous.
I wish I had a nickel every time you said this podcast.
I actually wondered for a minute maybe Briscoe caught what Eddie had in that moment. Like, he just seemed so confused.
But he caught what he had?
Like, they're in Van Buren's office just doing cop stuff. I mean, it's not like you haven't done this for your entire career, Briscoe. And then he just seems so befuddled by the idea that, I don't know, this could be more complicated than originally thought. Like, you've been spending too much time with Eddie.
Well, at the end of the first half here, Briscoe and Green pull up to the store where Mr. Becker is opening up.
Where is he, Mr. Becker?
And he has the nerve to say,
"Where's who?"
Oh, my God. Oh, this scene.
All right, now take a look at the second half of this episode. Eli Becker has fled to Israel, where he claims residency, and the Israeli consul says they're not sending him back.
Wait a minute. Israel is violating its reciprocity agreements to harbor a murderer?
No, we intend to cooperate fully with your office and conduct a trial in Israel.
That's unacceptable. This is murder for hire committed on American soil. The only reason Eli Becker is in Israel is to avoid prosecution in an American court.
Abby learns that Eli was adopted and his birth mother was Mary Elizabeth Kelly.
The fact they repeat like 6 times.
It's such a great name. D.A. Nora Lewin thinks if they can convince the Israelis Eli didn't meet the standard for conversion, they'll send him back. They go to a higher court, a Brooklyn Rabbinical court, and after weighing the arguments, the rabbis find Eli is not Jewish enough, and it's a shonda.
Oh, God.
Which is why I always wanted to yell for some reason. The Kaplans say the Beckers treated Eli differently because he was adopted. After taking a deal, Sal testifies he helped Eli sell the off-the-books merchandise until Saul discovered the thefts, and Eli wanted him taken out. On the stand, Eli says he was just blowing off steam, but Jack says he knew he was never going to inherit the business. After entreaties come suggesting Eli serve any potential sentence in Israel, McCoy and Carmichael dangle the offer hoping for a plea. Eli asks his parents what to do. Mom says if he's truly innocent, they'll fight for him, but if not, he should take the deal. And the father goes, what your mother said.
He's been spending too much time with Eddie,
too. Jewish stereotypes shattered by NBC forever. What do you think?
Oh, yes, totally. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I was surprised at some of the accuracy, but then some of it was also
you
just
mean the
like...
yelling?
I'm talking about stereotypes.
There was a lot of yelling.
We see no evidence that to this point Eli Becker has been living what we would call a Jewish lifestyle. Accordingly, Eli Becker is ruled not Jewish.
Shonda! Rabbis, can I be heard?
A ruling will be put into writing and made available to both sides by the end of the day.
I had half my family die in the ovens. Who the hell are you to tell me that my son is not Jewish?
Sorry, Mr. Becker, this is not up to us.
All right, we're just going to skip ahead to that part there because we may as well get into it.
All right.
I want to know everything about this court.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know who the bailiffs are. I want to know how you get appointed. I want to hear the other cases. This would be a great Thursday night at 10 p.m. on NBC show.
Would it?
I think so.
No. It would maybe make a great web series.
What's the 10-minute thing? Is it Quibo or
Quibi or Quibi?
It would be perfect for that.
I mean, seriously though, that is what in Hebrew this is called a beit din, and this is what they do. I don't know that they would be enlisted to determine someone's Jewishness that they would listen to in Israel, because the Israeli Jewish rabbinical courts are very powerful, and they definitely have their own standard of doing things. And it's actually interesting that this episode brings up like who is a Jew and who is not a Jew, and I wrote a note like, oh no.
Same.
They definitely lost me when he was like, my family was died in the ovens, and I was like, well, that's A, a really interesting way to put that. B, nobody died in the ovens; they were already dead. Let's just. I mean, I know we're being dramatic here, but still, yeah, I don't know. That scene was just very like Rabbi this and Carmichael. Her name was the
yes.
Yeah. Okay, so when she was like halakhic law, and I was like.
Now, it's my understanding of halakhic law that there are 3 requirements for conversion: circumcision, Hebrew naming, and a ritual bath known as a mikvah performed by a rabbi. Please forgive me if I've mispronounced anything.
You're doing fine.
She did apologize at first for messing things up.
Yes.
I mean, the thing to note here is that they act as if this court is a joke when they're in their own office, right?
Yeah.
And then
I don't know.
They're sort of like,
They're
you're
like,
rabbis from Brooklyn. Let's see if they'll listen to those guys. And then when she goes there, she is the most earnest version of Abby Carmichael I have ever seen.
Really? Because I felt that Angie Harmon was probably the only one who actually felt uncomfortable about this whole setup.
I just found it really interesting the way they kind of kept almost code switching between the lawyer who's also not great in the rabbinical court, like refers to Eli Becker as like not particularly frum, and that's like that means religious, and like you would actually use that terminology. So it's interesting that like they didn't elaborate on that, because that is something that would be realistic. But then you have the guy going, oh, shonda, and like pulling off his yarmulke, and it's like, okay, did we get notes from somebody, or like, this is just not ringing Jewish enough to like the executive producer or something.
I just kept wondering, is this going to be like, was this an idea for like a future Dick Wolf spinoff that we never saw? Like
Law and Order Rabbinical Court?
Law and Order Rabbinical Intent?
Oh my God.
Man. So we do learn that Eli's birth mother is Mary Elizabeth Kelly.
What was her name?
Mary Elizabeth Kelly.
What was her name again?
Mary Elizabeth Kelly.
She's as Jewish as I am.
Well, you know that she was Catholic not because she gave the baby up for adoption, but because they are using all three of her names.
That's right, Mary Elizabeth Kelly.
And
she's as Jewish as I am.
Yeah, and I'm sure she is always known as Mary Elizabeth. Not just Mary, her middle name's Elizabeth,
Right.
but if she's,
Well, she had the troubles.
she had the troubles.
That time she went to go live with Aunt Mary Margaret.
She went to the farm for a couple of months, came back a whole new person.
Oh, poor Mary Elizabeth. She had the troubles.
So we see the city councilman, who I guess is the Jewish General Mike Flynn, says if Eli could serve his sentence in Israel, people would appreciate it.
If Mr. Becker has spent his entire life believing himself to be a Jew and now wants to live in the state of Israel as a Jew, there are those who would say it would be a mitzvah to allow it.
Only a mitzvah.
What do you mean, only a mitzvah?
I mean, there are no elections riding on this? The fate of nations isn't hanging in the balance?
There are people who would appreciate it in Israel and in New York. If that means something to you, maybe you can help bring it about. And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
That guy was so scuzzy. I was actually probably of everything the most offended by his portrayal. And just him being like, they would have the undying gratitude of the Jewish people. And I'm like, first of all, you can't get two Jewish people to be grateful about the same thing. So good luck. We have whole holidays dedicated to trying to make sure we're grateful about the same thing. We still managed to disagree. And it was just like, what do you guys do you want to be like a mover and shaker in Israeli politics? Like, what's this about Jonathan Pollard? And like he just is on a different plane, and I was just very like, all right, whatever. Also, they just did not fit his kippah very well because half these guys looked like it was about to fly off.
How do you keep one on when you're bald? I kept wondering that every time Eli was in the scene.
Well, one of my uncles is bald, and we do joke that he should use a suction cup.
A little spirit gum, just like everything else on Broadway. But look, he does it instead of like Nora saying, I will not be intimidated or politically bribed when it comes to the equal application of the justice, sir. We hear until Jack
Berenson is lobbying very hard to let Becker serve his sentence in Israel, and right now it's a concession I feel inclined to make.
I was like, wait a minute. I thought the whole point of that scene was to show you have a backbone.
Well, it's problematic in a few ways. However, it is something that bears out in New York politics a lot, as I'm sure Michal can elucidate in terms of like city powers having a interesting sort of waxing and waning relationship with Jewish leaders in the community. I mean, I know de Blasio has really kind of like made news a lot for his, choices and political decisions and so forth. It's a complicated ecosystem in New York. However, the problem here is this show makes it seem like Jews are monolithic and only one person and of one mind, which is how this show always treats people in all sorts of groups. And I think clearly that's not the case in real life. So I agree that the depiction of it was kind of scuzzy. There's usually more pushback. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, there is usually more pushback. So the fact that it was like we're dangling kind of campaign money in front of you, and then 5 seconds later, I think this might be such a good idea. It's kind of like, wow, there weren't a lot of dots to connect on that one.
Yeah.
It's also just like, are there people like advocating for a guy who, not to make it, a closed ecosystem, but like he murdered a Jewish guy, like it's not like a random crime. It's like a specific gross, betrayal. And to me, it would be like, if there were like op-eds in some of the papers, like this man must be tried in Israel. Like, well, okay, maybe. But then again, like nothing seems to happen in this show that doesn't happen like in the rooms, including their personal lives. I don't think I've ever seen a TV show that like didn't address people by name. It was just like, here we are. This is who you are.
So you're saying that it wouldn't be a mitzvah?
Yeah, no. Can we, no. To any aspiring writers out there, just don't throw that word around if you don't know
Thank you.
So in the end, the father asserts Eli's innocent by saying,
"It's only generous if he committed a murder for hire, and I say he did not."
Way to be loyal to your partner of many decades.
Right.
I thought you guys were, quote, like family. Guess not.
because I'm just to say that would not go over in an Irish family. You did what, Jackie? Get my wooden spoon. Right now. This isn't rabbinical court. All right, let's take a look at the real-life story that inspired this episode. It's time for Ripped from the Headlines.
You think you know who did it. You think you know who did it. But you don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. Ripped from the Headlines.
This episode is inspired by the 1997 case of Maryland teenager Samuel Sheinbein. He and his friend Aaron Needle were accused of murdering and dismembering Freddie Tello, Needle's rival for a girl's affection. They beat Tello to death, dismembered and burned the body, stuffed it into trash bags and stored it in a vacant house. When the corpse was discovered, canines sniffed the trail back to Scheinbein's garage. Before police could nick the teen, Scheinbein's father stuck him on a plane to Israel. Once there, he claimed citizenship, which shielded him from extradition to the US. The American government applied intense diplomatic pressure to get him back, with congressional threats to withhold aid if they didn't produce the fugitive. Scheinbein's lawyers argued that even though the country had a treaty with the United States, an Israeli law protected its citizens from extradition orders from other nations. Israel's Supreme Court agreed, and Scheinbein remained in the country. Frustrated by the ruling, prosecutors tried Scheinbein in Israel for his crimes in America. He accepted a plea bargain of 24 years. In 2014, after smuggling a gun into his Ramallah prison, Samuel Sheinbein was killed in a shootout with guards.
Damn. I somehow missed that coda.
All right, so just for context, because we didn't get a lot of it in the TV show.
We did not.
The extradition laws in Israel have since changed, but they were originally set up to protect Israeli citizens from being sent to countries that were anti-Semitic so that they could be treated as political prisoners. It was a protection thing, but now for protection, the citizen must have a residential connection to Israel, so it can't be abused, as some think that the law was in this case. Also, they'll permit extradition for trial if the citizen can serve their sentence in an Israeli prison. And the U.S. has signed on to that treaty, and so they're okay with that. So I guess if they meet the definition today, you could be tried in the U.S. and serve your sentence in Israel.
That's news to me. I mean, it's actually...
You were planning on it.
I know, right? I was like... I mean, I was very curious why he would want to serve his, time in Israel. Because, again, they just didn't establish that this guy, had half a foot in Tel Aviv. They were just like, oh, yeah, he lived there for a while, and I don't know. But it was interesting to me because I'm interested in the timeline on this, because I remember when I was on my Boardwalk Empire kick and I was Googling what happened to Meyer Lansky. He was actually extradited from Israel. He tried to do the same thing so that he wouldn't have to stand trial in the U.S. And this was in the 70s. And I found a New York Times article about it where they were like, we're not going to extradite you, but you can't stay here. And you can only go to a country that will accept you, aka only the U.S. And so that was, and then... So I was confused, and then I looked up the Sheinbein case, and I was like, okay, so clearly the law changed between the 70s and the 90s. But yeah, that was odd.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Israeli prison. Is it somehow better than prison in the United States?
I mean...
Food's different.
No, I guess the food would be kosher if that would be a concern. I mean, there are prisons in the U.S. that literally cater to...
It's pretty easy to smuggle a gun into one, apparently.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
According to Wikipedia, he had been given furlough, and that was how he kind of got the gun. I don't know. It was super weird. This guy definitely had issues. Let's just say.
So after he fled to Israel, Scheinbein's brother Robert flew to Tel Aviv and presented him with his first bottle of wine and a prostitute.
Nice.
Like you do.
Okay.
It's a mitzvah.
Don't stop it. Stop it. That's not a thing.
It's not a thing?
It's not a thing you can say, and you're using it wrong.
I learned 7 Yiddish words. I want to use them all. Because it's a shonda.
Just for the record, mitzvah is Hebrew.
Oh, okay. Thanks. See? I read stuff all the time. This is how you get to be a better ally.
Yeah.
You go on this podcast. Scheinbein's father had dual citizenship, and he was charged with obstruction of justice. And so he moved to Israel, where he couldn't be extradited.
Huh.
Same with the brother. So the family that pleads together flees together.
Apparently.
Do you like that one? Not so much.
I'll just say,
So in the murder of Freddie Tello, his accomplice, Aaron Needle, Aaron Needle hanged himself before trial.
Oh, dear.
And while in
This is
Israel,
awful.
Scheinbein also attempted suicide and was sent to a psychiatric hospital. That's where he was when they apprehended him in Israel. So when they were planning the murder, Scheinbein bought a Jiu-Jitsu 2000 knife.
The kind they sell on TV?
No, that's Jiu-Jitsu.
Okay.
J-E-W Jitsu?
That's what I thought you just
Maybe
said.
I'm wrong with a D. Jiu-Jitsu?
I don't know.
Well, he got it because it was recommended by Consumer Reports.
Oh, God.
I said... I don't know. Maybe it was it the one where they cut the tin can on the commercial?
I think it was, and then they cut the tomato.
And then they cut the tomato.
Yeah. Oh,
Ooh.
my God. Well, I mean, not to make light, but I guess doing your research can pay off.
Well, if a thing is worth doing.
Oh, no.
So in what podcast did Samuel Sheinbein's case play an important role? Anyone remember?
Cereal?
Explain.
Because am I right? First of all,
you are right.
Okay. Wait. Oh. Was it because of? Let me guess. Was it because of testimony of a friend? I don't know. Why?
No, it's when Adnan Syed asked for bail. The prosecution suggested Adnan would flee to Pakistan, saying
right.
they didn't want another Scheinbein situation.
That's right.
So thanks, Christina Gutierrez and Jay. Well, that is going to do it for us. We want to thank our special guest, Michal Schick.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Where can our listeners follow you online?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at InkAsRain, probably talking not about Law and Order, but definitely talking about Jewish things. Especially nowadays.
And Rebecca Lavoie, how can our listeners follow you?
You can find me at Reb Lavoie on Twitter and Instagram, and of course on all the other podcasts.
And you can track me on Twitter at Kevin P. Flynn. You can also tweet to us at Law and Order Pod, or follow us on Instagram at These Are Their Stories Podcast. Our newsreader was Cy Frater. Our theme music was composed and performed by Uncanny Valleys. Line editing by Henry Lavoie. Content assistance from Travis Roy. Lily Flynn handles promotions. To get ad-free episodes of These Are Their Stories a week early, sign up for Stitcher Premium. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with the U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exemption for criticism and commentary. Special thanks to the elite squad of the Law & Order wiki community for preserving the evidence. Go to lawandorderpodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter and a chance to be our next Law & Order Marathon winner. These Are Their Stories was recorded in the Yoga Loft above the Bodega in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi studio and is a production of Partners in Crime Media.
Partners in Crime Media.